Okay, so picture this. Christmas Eve, 1945.
Uh-huh.
We're in Fayetteville, West Virginia.
Okay.
The Sodder family home. Big family. George and Jennie Sodder, they've got 10 kids.
10 kids? Wow.
10. Now imagine this picture-perfect Christmas Eve turning into a nightmare.
Oh, no.
Because that night, 5 of those kids vanish. Gone. Without a trace. And that's what we're diving into today, the bizarre and honestly unsettling story of the missing Sodder children.
You know, it's funny, when I first heard about this case, I thought, okay, house fire, tragic, but the more you dig into the details of this case,
right,
the more you realize this is anything but a simple open and shut tragedy.
Yeah.
It's a tangled web of unanswered questions, conflicting information, and decades of heartbreak for the Sodder family.
And that's what gets me right. You've got these piles of sources, newspaper articles, witness testimonies, official reports, even interviews with the family themselves. And they all start with this very ordinary family, but then, bam, thrust into this mystery.
It's that classic, it can happen to anyone fear, amplified by the fact it happened on Christmas Eve.
Exactly. The night that's supposed to be about family and warmth and all that. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the early hours of Christmas morning.
Go on.
Everyone agrees the fire starts in the dead of night.
You're asleep, probably dreaming of sugar plums, and then smoke.
And in the Sodder house, it was Jennie, the mom, who first smelled it. She was actually in bed with their youngest, Sylvia. And then, well, chaos. George, the dad, he's trying to get everyone out, manages to save 4 of the kids.
But the fire's spreading too fast.
Way too fast. And the other 5 kids, upstairs, in the attic.
Trapped.
Like, at least that's what everyone assumes. But here's where it gets really strange, because when the fire dies down, they search the house. And there's nothing, no bodies, no remain. Like, they simply vanished.
Now, that is strange.
The official ruling, accidental electrical fire. But I don't know about you, but the more I read these sources, the more I think, hold on, was it really that simple?
It's like you start to question everything. And in a case like this, that's where things get really interesting, because it's not just that the kids were never found. It's the stuff leading up to the fire, after the fire, that just make you wonder if this was a tragic accident or something else entirely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of that stuff, because even before the fire starts, there's some creepy stuff happening. I mean, we're talking potential premonitions, threats, you name it.
It really is like the setup for one of those really good thrillers, you know, where it's like every little thing seems random at first, but then it all ties together. And boy, there are a lot of those little things in this one.
Like, take that whole thing with the insurance salesman a few weeks before the fire.
Oh, yeah. That was strange. I mean, it wasn't just your average sales pitch.
Not at all. The guy reportedly tells George Sodder straight up that his house is going to go up in smoke.
Go up in smoke, he said.
Yeah, and that his children would be destroyed.
Oh, that's chilling.
Right. Talk about foreshadowing. And then there's that other visitor, the one who's all focused on the fuse box, like weirdly focused.
That's in a bunch of the sources, too. Even the Wikipedia article mentions it. Some guy shows up, warns the Sawyers about fire hazards, and points right at the fuse box. Like, hey, you might want to look at that.
It's like someone was trying to plant the idea of a fire in their minds, and it doesn't stop there. Then there are those reports of a stranger watching the Sodder kids.
Watching the kids.
As they walked home from school, like every day.
Oh, now that sends shivers down my spine. I mean, separately.
Yeah.
Maybe it's nothing. But when you put it all together...
It's a pattern, man, and it's not a good one. Like, something bad is about to happen, and then on the night of the fire itself, it gets even weirder. Let's talk about the phone line.
Cut. Yeah.
Cut. Every single source mentions it.
Classic move, really. Chaos, no way to call for help.
Adds a whole other layer to it.
Definitely. And then there's that whole thing with the ladder, the one George usually used to get up to the attic.
Yeah.
Gone.
The ladder was just gone.
Vanished. Some of the accounts say it turned up later, miles away, down some embankment.
Okay, see, that's too specific to be random. Like, someone wanted to make sure that ladder was gone.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Hold on, it gets weirder. We're not done yet. It wasn't just the phone and the ladder.
What else?
George's trucks. Wouldn't start, both of them.
The trucks he used every single day.
Worked fine the day before, dead on the night of the fire. Multiple sources confirm it. Okay, so I'm just going to recap here because this is a lot. We've got those weird premonitions, we've got direct threats, we've got some creepy dude watching kids, a cut phone line, a disappearing ladder, and 2 trucks that suddenly decide to stop working, all in the same night.
It does beg the question, how much of this is just awful, awful luck, and how much is something else?
Something orchestrated, something deliberate.
And what's even more incredible is what the Sodders did next. They did not just accept this.
Oh no, they were just getting started. Seriously, I can't imagine. To lose 5 kids in a fire and then to be told, oh, it was just an accident, I don't think I could accept that.
It's the kind of loss I don't even know. It's almost too much to bear. You can understand why the Sodders needed answers.
Oh yeah, and they didn't just sit around waiting for those answers to fall from the sky. They were proactive, hired private investigators, right?
They did. Followed every lead, every rumor, anything to get a step closer to the truth.
And when that didn't get them anywhere,
They went back to the source.
they dug up the site of the fire themselves.
They did. Brought in equipment, sifted through everything. You have to admire their determination.
Ah, what did they find?
A few bone fragments.
Yeah.
The kids,
Here's the thing. Those fragments, an expert analyzed them, said they couldn't have belonged to all 5 children.
wait, so the bones they found weren't from all 5 kids. How is that even possible?
It deepens the mystery, doesn't it? And then, if all that wasn't strange enough, there's the photograph.
The photo of their son, Louis, the one that showed up years later.
The one and only. No Bertune address, no explanation. Just a photo of a young man who looked strikingly like Louis.
Okay, now come on, it's just too weird. It's like something straight out of, I don't know, a horror movie.
Stranger than fiction sometimes, you know? Think about what the Sodders went through. Every time they thought they were getting close.
Dead end.
Every single time.
It makes you wonder, how do you process something like that? How do you even begin to heal when the mystery's just hanging over you like that?
We're hardwired for answers, right? Our brains, they crave explanations. And when we don't have them, well, we come up with our own.
Which is exactly why this case still resonates today, even after all these years. I think we're drawn to that need for closure. We want to believe that even the most baffling mysteries can be solved.
And the Sodders, they were determined to solve it. So let's dive into some of the theories, because we got 2 main camps here. Some people, they hear this story and they say, look, it was a fire. The kids, they tragically died in the fire.
Right, and this theory often centers around the idea that the investigation, it wasn't perfect. That maybe the fire burned hotter than anyone realized.
And it destroyed all trace of the kids.
Which, back then,
Yeah.
not impossible. Forensics wasn't what it is today.
Good point. Technology was limited, techniques, it was a different world.
Exactly. So it's plausible, right? Evidence missed, things misinterpreted.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin. But then there's the other theory.
The one that says this was no accident.
The fire was intentional, staged.
And those suspicious events leading up to the fire, they're the backbone of this theory.
The threats, the phone line, that ladder.
The trucks. It all adds up, doesn't it? Like pieces of a puzzle forming a very disturbing picture.
A picture that says the children were taken and the fire, a cover-up.
And once you start down that road, you have to ask yourself, who would do such a thing? And why?
And that's where things get really interesting, because there are a lot of possibilities. So where do we even begin? I mean, who could pull something like this off?
Well, some of the sources, they point to organized crime.
The mafia.
The Sicilian mafia, to be exact. And it goes back to George Sodder's views on Mussolini.
He was really vocal about being against fascism, right?
Yeah, very much so. And it made him some enemies. Powerful enemies. There are even reports of threats against George, some specifically mentioning his children.
So this fire, it was a message, or a way to silence him for good.
It's definitely a chilling thought. And you know those mysterious men seen watching the Sodder children?
Yeah.
Some witnesses describe them as looking Italian, which just adds another layer to that whole mafia theory, you know?
It does. It really does. But could there have been another motive? Something besides George and his beliefs?
Some of the sources bring up another possibility, one that's pretty unsettling, to be honest. That the Sodder children were victims of human trafficking.
Human trafficking? Back then?
It was a different time. The world was a different place. Kids going missing, it wasn't as shocking as it is now.
So you're saying they could have been taken, sold to another family, or worse,
Right.
forced into some kind of labor?
The sources don't give us any concrete proof, but it was a reality for a lot of kids back then, and it's a grim possibility that we can't just ignore.
And then there's always that theory that it was someone close to the
Someone
family.
with a grudge.
Yeah.
A neighbor, someone they knew, maybe someone they trusted.
Someone they'd never suspect. And isn't that always how it goes? The most obvious answer is sometimes the hardest one to see.
Exactly. But again, like all the other theories, There's no hard evidence, nothing concrete pointing us in that direction.
70 years. It's been over 70 years, and the Sodder children case remains unsolved. Will we ever know what really happened that Christmas Eve?
It's the question, isn't it? And I think it's why people are still so drawn to this case, even after all these years. The lack of closure, that feeling that the truth is out there, it's a powerful thing.
It's like we've got this giant puzzle, right? We've got all these pieces, the clues, the strange events, those little whispers of something sinister. But without that final piece, it's just incomplete.
And maybe that's what stays with you. Maybe that's the real legacy of the Sodder children. This reminder that some mysteries, they might never be fully solved. They force us to accept that sometimes we just don't get to know the whole story.
We just scratched the surface today with this deep dive into the Sodder children case. But if this story, if this mystery has piqued your interest, I urge you, go out there, read those books, watch the documentaries. There's a ton of information out there just waiting to be explored.